The most common motivation to start a vegetable garden would probably be because you want to feed your family healthy, pesticide-free vegetables, or because you're looking to save some money on your grocery bill. However, one has to consider how much space do you actually need to be able to feed your family, and how many plants are you going to need. In this video, I'll cover 5 important factors as you start your summer vegetable garden, or if you're in the northern hemisphere, you're possibly planning for your summer vegetable garden, or if you can, your winter vegetable garden. My name is Bridget and this is the Sherwood Urban Farm. The first factor to consider would be how much space do you need. In the 70s, they did a study, and then they discovered that if you were going to feed one person on a vegetarian diet for 365 days of the year, then you would need a growing space of 370 square meters. So that is excluding any paths or storage space. So before you go out and rip up the pool and plow up your whole back garden, there are other ways of growing vegetables too. You don't need to confine your vegetable growing space just to your kitchen garden. You can look around your property, and if you have got space available, you can stick in some flower boxes and you can plant your vegetables in that. Or you could have 20-litre buckets where I grow my potatoes in 20-litre buckets now, and then you just position them in a sunny position around the property. Another option would be to grow runner beans along the front fence, or you can put tomatoes in those flower boxes on your veranda of your house. So there's lots of other options to expand your growing space. You don't necessarily need to rip up the backyard. The second factor to consider would be your local growing conditions. In our subtropical oceanic climate, we can grow vegetables basically throughout the whole year. In the northern hemisphere, that would probably be a little bit difficult, and even in some areas of South Africa, that is not possible. So you're going to have to consider your last frost date, and you're going to have to think of what your local climate is like, weather conditions, and what your soil is like. Now, along with all of this, you'd also have to consider how much time do you have. Now, in the no-dig garden, you don't actually need that much time, because once or maybe twice a year you're going to lay down about a 3-centimeter layer of compost. This will help suppress the weeds. You don't really have many weeds in a no-dig garden because you're not digging the soil up so that you keep exposing weeds. The third consideration would be what to grow and how much. So you may want to just buy vegetables that are very expensive to grow organically, like eggplants or maybe pattypan squashes. Or you might want to grow enough because you want to preserve, or beetroot or whatever. Then you'd actually need to grow 4 times the number of plants that you normally would grow. Or if you just want to grow enough food to feed your family, then I would certainly advise to just grow the things that your family actually eats. It's no point in growing these exotic artichokes and what's those other things called, asparagus, if you have got carnivorous members of the family that would only sink their teeth into things like potatoes, cucumbers and tomatoes. I'd recommend creating a list of the things that you normally buy in the shop, and then you can work out from there how much you eat per week and then how much you would need to grow. So for example, if you are using 2 kilograms of potatoes a week, then you would need 9 kilograms of potatoes for a month, which then equates to 109 kilograms of potatoes for the year. And that would mean you would need about 85 plants. So with potatoes, my goal is to grow enough potatoes that I can store for when a 7 kilogram pocket of potato is going to cost 80 Rand instead of the regular like 40 or 50 Rand. The factor would be getting the most out of the space that you have. So you can do this by growing different varieties. So for example, if we use our potatoes again, you can grow early, mid and late varieties of potatoes. This helps to stagger your harvest throughout the year. And then with tomatoes, I love to grow cherry tomatoes or cocktail tomatoes because they just yield so many fruit. And then if you want the bigger ones, then like let's say Roma or your Heinz varieties will produce the larger varieties of tomatoes. With beans, you can grow the bush beans and climbing beans for us in South Africa. You can grow those in summer, and then in winter you can grow fava beans. I would highly recommend that when you're choosing seed, you choose disease-resistant seed that is been hybridized to grow in our growing conditions, or wherever your local growing conditions may be. It is a very nice idea to have heirloom seed. And if it is heirloom seed that is used to your growing conditions and happens to have quite a high disease resistance, then by all means. But we and little suburban gardens don't actually have the luxury to be struggling along with finicky little plants that are only going to produce 1 or 2 fruits or vegetables. So that is really something that I'm actually quite passionate about. We just really don't have the space to be trying out different kinds of vegetables, which are not going to produce well, or they succumb to every kind of pest and disease. Under the same consideration, succession planting. So if you have just harvested your potatoes, you can then immediately pop in your leeks. Or if you wanted some quick growing vegetables like beetroot or radish, you can put those in after you've harvested something else. This leads me to my top tip, intercropping. You must be able to use every tiny little bit of space that you have available in your vegetable garden. Make sure that you always have extra plants available so that you can just stick them in. If a pest or a pet has destroyed a plant, then you can just stick in either another one of the same in, or something that will fit into that space. You can just pop it into the ground. And if you have a crop that takes longer to grow, you can interplant that with something that is faster growing, like radishes or beetroot. So my fifth and last consideration would be to invest in a greenhouse or in a high tunnel, or even little cold frames. They will be able to extend your growing season, maybe 1 or 2 weeks on the beginning of the growing season and 1 or 2 weeks on the end of the growing season. And that, I mean, if you can do 2 weeks on either side, that's a month of extra growing. Now, what I did this winter, I had planted cherry tomatoes in my greenhouse, and they didn't produce a lot of tomatoes, but now they are growing like crazy. I'm having tomatoes, the trusses are massive, where the ones that I've planted into the garden, they are only about this high, and obviously, you know, I only planted them about a month ago, so it takes that much longer. So it really is something to consider. Obviously you would need to have the space for it, but you do get the smaller ones. So in summer, what you would do then with your grow house, like let's say you had a high tunnel, you get smaller ones, then you can roll up the sides and you put shade cloths over it. So then it still gives you the ability to grow in it, and there's still sort of a certain amount of protection from things like birds, which is amazing because in our area we have mouse birds, and I used to have a pet mouse bird and I loved it to tears, but they are very destructive. A sort of smaller structure which you can very easily put over your beds is row covers, and you can use them like shade cloths when it gets really hot, or you can use them for protection against pests. And then those of you who are in areas where you get frost, then you'll get the fleece ones, which will protect your crops against frost, or if it just gets really cold. And the added advantage is, in an area like where we live in Port Elizabeth, we are known as the windy city, so there's a lot of wind, and I mean, that really just wrecks your crop sometimes. So that will also help. Is just like what I usually do is I'll maybe take like PVC piping or these plumbing piping, and that bends relatively easy, and I just stick it in the ground like that. It's really affordable, and then I will cover it with a shade cloth, or I will cover it with some kind of a netting to protect it against aphids and the like. Well, I sure hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. I hope that you found some use out of the different factors that I brought up to consider for this growing season and even for future growing seasons. And if you really enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and share with your friends, and have a fantastic day further.